I'm the Bible Charts guy, and these are the 7 signs in the Gospel of John. Download this chart in the description below, hit subscribe, and let's learn about the book of John. This book loves the number 7. There are 7 I am statements. There are 7 feasts. Jesus is called by 7 titles across 7 different days. There are 7 witnesses to his identity, and Jesus performs 7 signs. That's not because Jesus only did 7 miracles. John himself tells us that there are many other things that Jesus did, so many as a matter of fact that if every one of them were to be written down, the whole world couldn't contain the books. And therefore, John was selective. He chose these 7 signs for a specific purpose, and he tells us what that is. Here in the last verses of chapter 20, he says, Jesus, he did many other signs that are not written down, but these are written so that you may believe, 1, that Jesus is the Christ, and 2, that Jesus is the Son of God, and by believing you may have life in his name. Each one of these signs, therefore, must somehow prove that Jesus is either the Messiah or the Son of God, and in so doing, invite its readers to believe and have life. So what are these signs? Signs which are written so you may believe and have life. Well, there are 7 of them, and the first one is Jesus turning water into wine up north at a wedding in Cana. And also in Cana, Jesus is going to heal an official son, but then down south in Jerusalem, Jesus will heal a crippled man by the pools of Bethesda. Back up north again, Jesus is going to feed 5,000 on a mountain near the Sea of Galilee. But then Jesus is going to travel south once more and heal a man born blind there in Jerusalem. And then a couple miles outside of the city in Bethany, Jesus is going to raise Lazarus from the dead. But his final sign is his own resurrection. Now, there isn't 100% agreement that these are the 7 signs. 2 more contenders often get thrown into the list, but the key is that these 7 are explicitly called signs which Jesus performs. Now, some people point to the cleansing of the temple as a potential sign because there's this vague reference to the signs that Jesus was doing at that time. However, John is going to explicitly call the water into wine miracle as Jesus' first sign, and the healing of the official son in chapter 4 as his second sign. So I think that rules out the cleansing of the temple. Others think that Jesus walking on water in chapter 6 should be included on this list, but John never calls it a sign. But let's return to the purpose of these 7 signs. What are they supposed to accomplish? Well, belief. Jesus did a lot of signs. These are written so you may believe. Did it work? Well, yes, it did. After Jesus's first sign, it says his disciples believed in him. And then, when the official realized that Jesus healed his son at a great distance at the exact moment when Jesus spoke the word, when he saw the sign, he himself believed and all of his household. And then later, when Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, when all the Jews saw the sign that he performed, they believed in him. And finally, at the Last Supper, Jesus told his disciples, I am going away. That is, I'm going to die, but I will come to you. I will be raised from the dead. And now I have told you this beforehand so that when it does take place, you may believe. And they did. It worked. Jesus' signs produced belief in his disciples. But it wasn't a generic belief. John recorded these 7 specific signs so that his readers would believe something very specific about Jesus. These signs were designed to make his readers believe that Jesus is the Christ and the Son of God. We need to look now at how these 7 signs produced this kind of belief, how each of them proves that Jesus is either the Messiah or the fully divine Son of God. So how does turning water into wine prove that? Well, the Christ, Israel's Messiah, will restore the glory of her kingdom. He will restore its peace, prosperity, its righteousness, and its wine. Look at Joel chapter 3, the glorious future of Judah. In that day, the mountains will drip sweet wine. The hills will flow with milk. And Amos chapter 9, the restoration of Israel in that day. Behold, the days are coming when the plowman will overtake the reaper, and the mountains will drip with sweet wine. I will restore their fortunes of my people in that day. And what does it mean to restore their fortunes? Well, this Messiah, he will rebuild their ruined cities, and they will plant vineyards and drink their wine. They will make gardens and eat their fruit. The Messiah will bring this restoration to Israel, and he began to do so in Cana of Galilee at a wedding. Now, can you think of another wedding, a wedding feast, where they will serve aged wine? I can think of one in Isaiah 25. On this mountain, the Lord of hosts will make for all people a feast of rich food, a feast of well-aged wine, of wine well refined. And on this same mountain, he will swallow up death forever. The Lord will wipe away all tears from all faces. And how is he going to do that? Well, at this marriage supper of the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world, he will offer his flesh and his blood, which is symbolized as wine. As sign number 3, Jesus is going to heal a crippled man lying beside the pool of Bethesda, and he's going to do so on the Sabbath. And John, he's going to take this as an opportunity to defend the deity of Christ. So when the Jews accuse Jesus of breaking the Sabbath, he's going to say, well, doesn't God work on the Sabbath? Of course he does. He's constantly upholding the universe. He never stops working. And so Jesus continues in chapter 5 when they accuse him of breaking the Sabbath. My Father is working until now, and I am working. Now the Jews, they understood completely what Jesus was doing. That is why they were seeking to kill him, not because he was breaking the Sabbath, but because he was calling God his own Father and thus making himself equal with God. And then Jesus lists 7 things that the Father does and the Son does likewise. So, number 1, my Father is working and I am working. Whatever the Father does, so the Son does likewise. The Father gives them life, so the Son also gives life. Just as they honor the Father, so they will honor the Son. The Father has life in himself, so he has granted that the Son may have life in himself. Remember that these signs in John are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Son of his Father. The Gospel of John was most likely written for a Jewish audience because so many of the arguments that he uses to prove that Jesus is Israel's Messiah are linked to Israel's scriptures. This is certainly the case for John's 4th sign, the feeding of the 5,000, which he uses to argue that Jesus is the prophet like Moses. Now, this is a messianic title reaching back to Deuteronomy 34, the final verses of the Pentateuch, where it says that there has not arisen a prophet in Israel like Moses, a prophet who knew Yahweh face to face and performed signs and wonders. So just like Moses, in this chapter, Jesus is going to feed his people with miraculous bread in the wilderness. And then, same chapter, Jesus is going to walk on water, just like Moses passed through the waters of the Red Sea. But after Jesus tells the Jews, I am the bread of life and you must eat my flesh, they grumble against him, just like they grumbled against Moses. And though this miracle of the feeding of the 5,000 is recorded in all 4 Gospels, it is only in John where we're told that it took place on the Passover. That is because it is Jesus's flesh as the Passover Lamb of God, which takes away the sins of the world. The focus of this 5th sign isn't the miracle itself, but it's on how the Pharisees respond to this miracle. When they both question the healed man and his parents, but still don't believe, Jesus says to them, In chapter 9, for judgment I came into this world, that those who do not see may see, and those who see may become blind. These blind Pharisees are supposed to be Israel's shepherds. They're religious leaders, but they prove themselves to be thieves and robbers who only come to steal and destroy instead of feeding and nurturing the flock. But Jesus, he is the good shepherd. And this title, shepherd, is another term for the Christ, the King of Israel, the Messiah, who, as the good shepherd, not only feeds his flock with miraculous bread from heaven and water from the rock, but also will lay down his life for the sheep, which he does in chapter 19. And then in chapter 20, Jesus is going to appear to 10 of his disciples, but Thomas is nowhere to be seen. Now, poor Thomas, he often gets a bad rap as doubting Thomas, but his doubt created the opportunity for the greatest confession of Jesus' divine identity in the Bible. Jesus says to Thomas here in chapter 20, "Put your finger here, see my hands, put it in my side. Do not disbelieve, but believe." And Thomas, he says, "My Lord and my God." This is the exact confession which John hoped his gospel would produce. I wrote these 7 signs so that you would believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, so that you would say with Thomas, "My Lord, the Christ, and the Son of God." Mark opens his gospel with a similar confession. He says, "This is the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God." Now, if you want to see how Jesus' baptism in Mark 1 fulfills 3 Old Testament prophecies, you should check out this next video.